question that I have for all the panelists also is, are we really lucky that we have not invested hugely in the infrastructure that we're starting, and therefore we can do it much more efficiently than many other countries with greater amount of usage and other things? So that is one broad question. But I've already raised the questions to Sumantran and Satish. So maybe Sumantran, you can go on.
I'll take up 3 points very quickly. First, you asked me about the 15-minute city. Well, I think in the old days when we wrote software, you had the main code and you had subroutines. You passed a few variables from the main code to the subroutines. There was a lot of activity inside the subroutines, and you passed back a few variables back to the main code. That is what cluster cities are all about. You have a lot of activities inside cluster cities and limited activities connecting cluster cities. So you can imagine if Maramalai Nagar had developed into a major cluster city for Chennai, with its own industry, with its own employment, with its own schools, with its own residential areas, with its own shopping, with its own entertainment, a lot of people would be very happy living within that 15-minute city. Of course, they would have the access to the Chennai International Airport. They would have access to the Chennai railway station. So you would have an ability to limit the mobility demands in a way that is far better controlled. So in a nutshell, cities are beginning to look at those concepts, because the idea of no matter what we do, I mean, we've just done a study looking at multiple pathways for mobility and energy. We think electric vehicles will get us out of the problem, and the answer is no. I mean, if all of us got into electric vehicles and started driving around, we don't solve the congestion problem and we don't solve the CO2 problem, because at the end of the day, even that grid is consuming some sort of fossil fuel, and we have a carbon emission impact on that. So we have to first start at controlling the demand for mobility with all of what we've talked about, the digital tools, the distance, the depth of distance, and a better organization of where and how we live. Once we do that, we have to find appropriate solutions. I mean, this whole business of Richard Thaler's thesis on nudge, which got him the Nobel Prize, is all about public policy nudging people into behaviors that they believe are for the common good. Now, is this profound knowledge by the bureaucrats that they know what's good for you and therefore is going to define the architecture? No. At the end of the day, public policy is an outcome of a dynamic assessment of what is social good. And when cities like in Finland, Tallinn says public transportation is free, they don't intend it to be a one-shot solution forever. But they are addressing a situation where, in fact, it has been found in Copenhagen, the city spends 13 cents for every passenger kilometer where a person uses a car. And the city saves 18 cents per passenger kilometer for everybody using public transit. So they basically say, we don't want you to do this. In the Docklands area, when they built this whole Canary Wharf area, they said, they limited the amount of parking capacity because they said, if you all bring your cars here, we don't have space for you. And by the way, Docklands, the light rail is going to be subsidized. Go ahead and use that and commute by. So nudges are a very accepted policy tool for us to address problems that we have. But it is important, particularly in democracies, that these kinds of policies are dynamic. What we need today may be different from what we would need 10 years from now as a result of adoption of or availability of new technology and newer social habits and social requirements that we would have to deal with. Let me leave it there in fairness to allow time for the others as well. If I've not answered something, I'm happy to get to that.
No. This is brilliant. And I really think that the metaphor of client-server architecture and distributed computing is an interesting metaphor. We can debate that endlessly, but I think it's brilliant. And the fact that the choices that we make today can be nudged, and that has to be constantly evaluated and not a permanent feature is interesting. So let me move on to Mr. Satish. I think I said a few questions for you. Primarily on how do we really make most of the infrastructure projects anywhere in the world, as well as and definitely in India are over budget and take longer time. And how do we see this scenario changing? And how has the government made ease of doing infrastructure much better? So you can give a few examples from
Yeah,
your
sure.
vast
Yeah.
experience. Will help us.
Yeah, first of all, you're saying that I was optimistic. I'm actually coming just after, we made the budget for the next year and all. So whatever I'm saying is with the numbers, with the projects which are there in the pipeline and all. So we are pretty confident that India will grow, and you just see the infrastructure, just you go outside your office room and all, so many roads to be done, so many metros to be done. Connectivity is not there. So India's infrastructure has to grow if we have to really have a better life and all in India. So I think that is something that I want to tell you. Second, coming to projects and all, as I told you, the pre-qualification is quite good, in India. Though there are sometimes, too many people are coming, but in general, the technically and all, it is there. Wherever it is not there, we are talking to people so that at least, like if your job is around 5,000 crores, the similar companies need to be pre-qualified so that, you have the right competition and you don't unnecessarily quote less. Niti Ayog is also looking whether why should the job be given to only L1? Why not there be, a technical and commercial both? So they would like many tender, there's a thing called QCBS where, your technical capability has got almost something like 70% of the marks and 30%
Ah,
only for commercial. And this is already there in India for the consultants. When they award the job to consultants, this QCBS system is actually implemented, whereas it's not done for the construction companies. And I think Mr. Amitabh Kant is driving this, and he wants to make sure that the right companies get the job and come out of this L1 business in India. Second, the projects and all are now, are much better actually in terms of, the time schedule and all. One of the things is earlier government used to give projects even when the right of way was not there. Today, if you see NHA and all, they don't give projects unless around 80% of the land is available. So till such time they don't make, because they also have huge liability in terms of we make claims because we are already mobilized and the right of way is not there. So they are being very, very careful. And so award, and they are likely to float the tender only when the right of way is available. Coming to the technology, I don't know if you've seen in Mumbai, olden days, everybody used to do in situ metro and all. But if we see today, every company that has got the metro, there are about 7 or 8 companies, all are using the precast. And all are using, the big cranes, the big gantries and all. So India has picked up that way. It's not that it's only one L&T which is doing that. Many other smaller companies which have learned actually. And as I told, even the metro above ground level is commoditized. Like we don't want to quote for that. So that is the kind of, the others have come up. Many small companies and all, they have come and they have perfected the art of doing this job in a very mechanized way and all. So things are happening in India. And Bombay would be the right example if you just drive around, the Western Expressway and all. So you can see that, people have done a very good job, pretty fast job, is what I would say.
thank you. I think when I meant optimism, I meant optimism and not optimistic. I'm sorry. I think you are injecting a lot of optimism by the fact that you're in the leading edge of investment. So I was actually feeling good that
Thank you.
the leading edge of infrastructure creators are feeling a sense of optimism from
Yes,
both the
yes.
government side of easing of doing infrastructure as well as on the technical side of this, and the
Yes.
fact that you're saying that there are many good companies which are coming up in the hierarchy of
Yes.
infrastructure companies. Okay, thank you. Ramesh?
No, I will just clarify one thing. I did not mean that we make infrastructure free. I think Sumantran partially answered it. I think the distinction is between pricing a metro ride at 30 rupees versus pricing it at 75 rupees. And
That's right.
I'm more in the camp of sort of price it at 30 rupees. In fact, I'm quite against sort of free infrastructure because it creates all kinds of second order. So that's just a clarification, Santhanam. And you had a question around picking the right projects. I completely think that we have the ability to leapfrog and pick the right projects based on sort of what is the paradigm of development. So we don't need to overbuild. By the way, in the early 2000s, I used to track China a lot. I mean, the fact is China overbuilt infrastructure. I mean, they built an airport for 2050, and I think we will not. I mean, first of all, we don't have the money to do it. Second is we shouldn't be doing it. I think we can be very prudent around what projects that we pick. And I wholeheartedly agree with what Satish is saying. I think contrary to what public perception is, this era of, R.K. Lakshman jokes saying this bridge will never get complete, two sides of the bridge will never meet. That is not the world of infrastructure we live in today. Projects are getting done on time. Projects are being delivered on budget, including sort of government-sponsored projects and things like what Satish talked about, which is if Niti Aayog introduces QCBS into infrastructure projects, I cannot but radiate positivity and say that the best times are ahead, right? Both in terms of picking the right projects, executing them on time, and also figuring out ways in which infrastructure can be used.
Thank you. That's really succinct. So I'm going to just end this session by a couple of things that each of you think is needed for our number Chennai. So we can't we can't just talk about Delhi Metro and Mumbai Metro and Mumbai Western Express Highway. We need a little bit of stuff for Chennai. And how is Chennai placed? Just a couple of things that you think are critical. So for
I don't know if it's critical, but it definitely answers your number Chennai question. I really wish that we get the three rivers in the Buckingham Canal back up in the next 10 years and you harness them for economic activity and for the beauty of the city.
That's perfect. Yeah.
My fear is, this uncontrolled urban sprawl that we are seeing is going to be disastrous for both economy and for environment and air quality. And it's a sad statement that one of the very senior bureaucrats who I raised the subject with, who had very intimate knowledge, a highly intelligent person, basically said, as long as permits and construction licenses are being done the way they are, we are not going to change it. We are having uncontrolled sprawl, and for everybody to see, Los Angeles is a shining example of the kind of mess you will create with uncontrolled sprawl. It's a most energy, inefficient, the most congestion-oriented, the most air quality, worst air quality, and that's the kind of city we're going to rush headlong into. So we need some very urgent policy fixes on this.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Satish?
Yeah. One of the things is, we have to give focus on actually the infrastructure and other things. So people are, even during elections and all, nobody is talking about the infrastructure in India or even in Tamil Nadu. All parties, I'm not saying any party. So I think somewhere this focus has to come that, you want to drive growth and all. What is needed for Tamil Nadu? They say, I'll give free TV, free this and all. I think people have to come above that, but, somewhere we are not moving. And one of the things is, because of the IT, the work from home and all, I think things will change. And I think a lot of development will happen. HCL has told today that I don't want people to really come to Delhi. Once the same thing happens in Chennai, all the IT crowd can work from home or work from anywhere in Tamil Nadu. So even the development will happen in the tier 2 cities and all that. And, you can decongest the city. Many people, if you see in, Pongal, half the people go away to their, natives and all. So something like if they all can start working from there, why should they all live in Chennai? Because, the kind of life you have in, the tier 2, tier 3 cities is much better than Chennai.
Thank you. Thank you. So with that, I have to close this session. It's always a big challenge when you have to take a subject like infrastructure. There is no end to it. I mean, we missed power, we missed roads, we missed ports, we missed airports, we missed many gas, energy. So it's a big challenge. But it's really, for me, I think the most important thing is that one, I think the government is changing its ways of doing things. And that was evident in what the CEA said. That's also evident in practice from what companies like L&T has said they said that the government is really emphasizing, is keen to get the projects ahead, and even moving from the dreaded L1 maybe, and so that speed, efficiency, quality come in the way. And I think we had our guru, mobility guru, Sumantran talk about it. I think it gives me immense hope that these, even if there is a lot of urban sprawl in Chennai, I hope some of them become 15-minute cities, and that we have these interconnectedness. Because even a company like us, which is largely manufacturing, today 50% of our people are working from home. If that can happen to a large industrial group like us in India, that just means that there is a fundamental shift that digital is enacting amongst all our lives. And I think there is an interesting possibilities. And I think the sense of optimism that we have to the decade is ahead of us. There is the right projects to choose, the right investments can be made, the right technology, and at the right cost. And we don't have to over invest. We can just do the right investment. This is really the decade ahead. So I'm really ending this on this note of confidence, optimism that good things are ahead of us, even if there are huge challenges.